Okay, good afternoon. Oh,
Good
for you guys,
afternoon.
it's still good
No, it's
morning,
good morning. It's 11
everyone.
o'clock in the
Yes, good
morning.
morning, everyone.
Good
So
morning.
today, I'd like to introduce you to Jen. Jen is a friend of mine. Actually, I was just reminding her how we met for the first time. It was 24 years ago. I was working at Disney and she was visiting the park, Magic Kingdom, with her parents. And that's how we started the conversation. Back then, I was planning to move back to Toronto, where she was living with her parents. And that's how we kept in touch. Like we were just communicating back then. There was no WhatsApp, MSN, whatever. So we just kept in touch by email. And then I eventually moved back to Toronto. And then we used to hang out and meet each other back then. Of course, afterwards, I moved to Europe. We lost contact a little bit, but we still kept in touch. So I know a lot about her. She knows a lot about me. But now I'm going to let you guys get to know her as well. Jen, thank you so much for being here. I remember when I first asked you, you were really excited about meeting Brazilians and helping us out with this program, which is very, very nice. So guys, if you're ready, you can start asking questions. Or Jen, better, please just introduce yourself a little bit better. Tell them where you live and where you do for work, a little bit, something interesting about you before they starting with these questions, okay?
All right. Well, I live in Niagara Falls area, Canada. That's in the province of Ontario. I work as an adjudicator or a judge with the Ministry of the Attorney General. And let's see, maybe some hobbies I have. Well, I have one daughter. I do a lot with youth. I try to support them through different programs, and I volunteer a lot. I used to do a lot of competitive cycling. So I used to ride the velodrome, and I really enjoyed that. So that's a little bit about me. I would love to know a little bit about everyone on the call too, if they're able to tell me.
For sure. Let's start with Vinny.
Okay, so hello, Jen. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone again. It's the first time I've spoken to a Canadian person, so it's really cool. And let me see. Well, I'm from São Paulo. It's actually a near part of São Paulo. It's a near city called Taboão da Serra. I'm an English teacher. I'm a musician. Yes, and I speak English for it's been a long time, but yeah, that's it. I think.
It's very good.
Yes. And
Yeah.
you have no accent. You sound Canadian.
Oh, you
You
see?
really do, yeah.
Wow.
Well done.
Lucas.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Jen, it's nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Everyone here is my first time in this program, in this AB, actually international. I live in São Paulo as well. I'm actually close to Vini. I work as a software engineer, and I've been studying English for like 10 and a half years, something like that. And it's nice to talk to a Canadian as well, because I am considering moving myself to Canada, and it's nice to have this opportunity to talk to you.
We have lots of room in Canada. Come on up.
Oh, that's nice. Nice to know that.
Yeah.
Well, you have a career that Canadians love, right? Canadians love to import, let's say, all these ITers. So for sure, you're gonna have a spot in Canada if you're really interested. So now we have not Brazilians. We have Bruce, who are he is our CEO. We have Laurence, and we have today Ibru. Oh, there's a couple. I don't know if she's ready, so let's let them. Oh, there's also a child who'd like to speak English with us. It's gonna be great for the first time. But let's go first with Bruce and the Laurence, okay? Bruce, please introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I'm from Michigan originally, city called Grand Rapids, which is more or less on the west side of the state. And I've been to Detroit. I lived in Detroit for about almost 4 years. And Jen had mentioned that she had already visited Detroit in the past, which is right across the river from a city called Windsor in Ontario, Canada. So they share the border, Canada and Michigan at that point. And there's a bridge that joins them and a tunnel that joins us. Anyway, I've been living now in Brazil for 17 and a half years, almost 18. And I'm married to a Brazilian lady. And we lived in the Sao Paulo area, in a city called Osasco, which is a suburb of Sao Paulo. And I've been teaching English since I got here, because that's what I could do, okay? I didn't speak Portuguese at all. And so I learned to speak Portuguese with my wife. And, it's been an interesting challenge. And since I've been teaching, I've noticed that the Brazilian people in general, they're afraid to speak because they want to speak perfect now. They don't want to wait to speak. No, they want to speak perfect now. And so it's a challenge for them to speak at all because they want to speak fluent right now. Okay. They're like Americans. They want instant gratification. Okay. So that's a difficulty because it takes a long time to learn a language. And I'm not saying it takes forever. No, but it takes 1 to 2 years to be able to speak intermediate. And so this challenge of being able to speak sufficiently to communicate is what I tell people. You don't need to speak perfect. You just need to communicate effectively. So that's basically it. I teach a little bit of English, but right now I'm in charge of this project we call English Brazil. And that's with the objective of helping Brazil speak English as a strong second language, because they can, but they need to dedicate their time to that objective. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you for being with us, Jen.
Okay, Laurence, all the way from France.
Hello. Yes, I'm Laurence. Do you hear me good? Yes?
Yes.
I am from the south of Brittany, so it's the northwest of France. I've known Simone through my time in the Netherlands. We met in Maastricht. Now I'm back to France. I'm a plastic engineer as a profession, and that's about it.
Okay. Are you guys ready? Are you going to introduce yourself as a couple, or are you going to do it alone today, Ibru?
No, I'm going to do it alone.
Okay.
Yeah. My name is Olawale. I'm from Nigeria. I live in Brazil right now. I moved to Brazil like 2 years ago. So, there has been ups and downs. It was not easy to cope into the culture and the food and everything. But right now, I think I'm finding my thing in Brazil. Like I'm settling down perfectly well. So I'm a software engineer too as well. I develop mobile phones. I build website and web applications, and I also study computer science at the University of the People online. So I think that is a little bit about myself.
Okay, Jen, I think you know everybody already. So you're the special guest today, so all the questions will be directed to you. So let's start with, for instance, with Adora. You said you work with volunteering, you're interested in the youth. How old is she?
So my daughter is 17 now, and she's looking to apply to university next year. So we're looking both at Canada and the US. She really wants to go to Cornell, which is in New York State, which I can't afford, but I'll find a way. It's a very good school. So we're actually going to be doing a tour of it in 2 weeks.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can continue with that. When it comes to education, there's a huge difference between the schools in the United States, Canada, and Europe. And I'm sure Walibi can also tell us. Yeah, Brazil. And I'm sure he can also tell us a little bit in Nigeria. So let's start. Tell us what you think are the big differences between the prices or schooling in Canada, and United States. And would you be happy and proud if your daughter decides to go to America to school and not stay in Canada, for instance?
So this is for me, I'm guessing, right? This question?
Yeah.
So there is a big price difference if you are attending a school out of your own country in North America. So if you lived in New Jersey and you went to a school in New Jersey, you'd be paying about 10% of what an international student would pay. And it's the same in Canada. If my daughter wanted to attend the University of Toronto, where I went to the University of Toronto, then she would probably have to pay between $8,000 and $10,000 Canadian if she goes to
Per year,
Cornell
right?
per year. That is just tuition. So for room and board and everything else, it works out to about $25,000 for her to stay in Canada per year. For her to attend Cornell in New York State, it's probably going to be close to $70,000
Wow.
dollars per year. And that's if we get some financial aid. If we don't get financial aid, it can be as high as $87,000 per year. Yeah. So
how many years?
crossed that we get some financial aid.
1 year. That's 1 year.
1 year.
And how many years she's gonna go for? 3 or 4?
4.
4.
And then she'll probably apply to either law, medical school, something like that. She likes school. She's a very smart girl, so I'm lucky that way.
You're gonna be very lucky and proud, but poor by the end of this journey.
Hopefully she can make lots of money in whatever she chooses to do, and she can support mom later on in life.
That's the idea.
I can explain you guys a little bit how it was my situation when I first moved to Europe. I had a bachelor degree from Brazil, right? I studied tourism when I was in Brazil. I did a couple or maybe 3 internships abroad. But my diploma, let's say my degree was really Brazilian. So when I first moved to Europe, I was living just across the border in Belgium with the Netherlands. So I had 2 options to go for MBA, right? You guys know what that means, MBA? So I applied for an MBA program. And then they told me, okay, because of the fact that you studied tourism, it had nothing to do with the fact that I had a Brazilian diploma degree, but because I was going to move from tourism to business. They told me you're going to have to go for 2 years and it's going to be full-time. So listen to this. I already had residence here. So I didn't have anything, all these extra prices when it comes to housing, food, and security, insurance and all these things. I didn't have to go for that, to think about that, let's say. However, in University of Maastricht, just for 1 year, I had to pay 10,000 euros if I was going to go there. In Belgium, if I chose to go in Belgium, I had to pay 2,500.
Wow.
So it's a huge difference when it comes to these 2 countries. Now I have a child, she's 13, almost turning 14. It's going to be pretty much the same. If she goes to Belgium, and then exactly what Jane was trying to explain, when you go to school in your own country, it's cheaper than when you become a foreigner. At that time, I didn't have a Belgian passport, so I was still considered a foreigner, even if I had my residence here. So my daughter, for instance, if she decides to go to school in Belgium, she will pay 1,500 a year without housing, food, and everything. If she decides to go to the Netherlands, I'm pretty sure she's going to pay the same due to the fact that she holds a Dutch passport. But for Belgium, on the other hand, it would go up to 3,000, let's say. So there's a huge difference there when it comes to international students, residents, and also the countries. I think Laurence, she has some friends that used to go to University of Maastricht as well. Maybe you can give us some input on that, Laurence. Do you remember when it comes to pricing? No?
No, but in my mind, it was depending on which school you apply in Maastricht. If you apply to the university or if you apply to Zuid, you know?
University.
Yeah, you have the public university from the Maastricht University, and you have Hogeschool Zuid. Hogeschool Zuid, it's much more expensive, and I didn't know there was a difference.
Yeah.
If you were, I thought it was the same price for bachelor. For master, it's different, but
Yes.
for bachelor, it should be the same price because it's harmonized now. So, but maybe you are right, because in Germany they come to Maastricht because it's cheaper.
Yeah. You see, so
But
it's different.
the big difference to me, it's if you go to Hogeschool Zuid, then you have to pay. It's kind of private business school, and if you go to Maastricht University, it's cheaper.
Okay, guys, so you know that. Wallacey, is that your name? Wallacey. No, oh, it's
Wally.
Wally. Okay, that's easier. Wally. How is that in Nigeria? Are schools expensive?
No, the schools in Nigeria are not expensive, but the quality is not the way it used to be, you know? Like for me right now is that I don't want to school in Nigeria. That's why I will to, like I'm 30 years old. By now I should be done with my schools and even masters. But I didn't go to school until I arrived here in Brazil. Because the education right now in Nigeria is going down the hill. It was not, it was good before, but now it's not good anymore. So I think right now in Nigeria, there's a lot of chaos, you know, so many things going from bad to worst. You understand? So I wouldn't say the education system is good anymore. To me, in my own opinion right now. So
Okay.
that's just it.
Thanks for sharing. Okay, I see that Renato just joined in. Renato, you know we are in Canada today, right? So would like to ask some questions to our Canadian guests?
Oh, sorry for my delay. I have been a trouble week, and I think that I have to reschedule my time. But okay, nice, Jen. Nice to meet you. And I think that I've been to Canada maybe 7 years ago. I went to Toronto, and I spent a month there, and I enjoyed it a lot. In spite of not meet Canadian people there, I met Pakistanis, Chinese, Brazilian, all the nationalities, less Canadian. Yeah. When I was in the streetcar, I remember that I looked the people inside the vehicle, inside the streetcar, and I didn't get to recognize a real Canadian there. Okay, but that was funny. But I think that that Toronto, being in Toronto, was a good experience, and in spite of I get a little bit strange or weird the code, yeah, and I think that Canada, that Toronto is a cool city, but I enjoy it. So I don't have a specific question to make to you now, but it's my pleasure to have you here.
Renato, I think your question should be, Jen, how does it feel to be a real Canadian in Toronto? Because I had the same feeling when I was living there. It was really tough to find the Canadians.
Yes, yeah, well, and there are many languages being spoken. If you came to Toronto speaking only Portuguese, you could find a community within Toronto where you could speak Portuguese and English, like both. But Toronto is very, very multicultural, and I grew up in it. So it seemed normal to me. I didn't know anything different. My best friends from the time I was very, very young, they came from India, they came from, I think, Vietnam, they came from, so all different places all over the world. I had a few European friends. One of my best friends right now actually lives in Africa. She's in Rwanda, but she was living in Nigeria for almost 10 years. So a lot of people come from all over the world. They make Toronto home. And I think we are lucky to have a lot of them. A lot of them bring different skill sets. They may be software engineers or plastic engineers, or they have a special skill usually that gets them here. So, yeah. But it is different experience, especially if you're coming from a city that is not as multicultural. To land in Toronto and look around, and you maybe wouldn't know what country you're in, right? So
how do you compare it with Niagara Falls? Because I believe there you do have lots of Canadians, right?
we do. It is there is a big difference. So I live about 25 minutes from Niagara Falls, and it really is a very different community. It's a smaller community, and it is predominantly people that were born and raised in Canada. Their grandparents were born and raised in Canada, and so a lot of Canadians. Now, Niagara Falls is very touristy, so you'll find a lot of different ethnicities there as well. Mhm.
Is your background German?
It is. Yeah, yes.
How many generations back?
My grandparents. So my father's parents came from Germany. My mother's side of the family has been in Canada for over 200 years.
All right. So you are Canadian. You are Renato. You finally met a real Canadian. How does it feel?
After long term, I got it. Yeah. But I remember that one thing that impressed me a lot was the big number of Chinese people living there.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't matter. I'm not criticizing Chinese people, but I feel strange how they don't mix with other cultures, with other people. They seem to be living in China, in Beijing or something, or some place like that. So that was a thing that I really consider weird in my mind. So, but that's the curiosity. But anyway, I think that the month that I spent there was really beautiful. I love to be in Niagara Falls. I wouldn't like to compare to Foz do Iguaçu because are totally different places. Yeah. But I think that visit Niagara Falls was a really fun tour for me. Yeah.
That's good. And I think, Renato, you're probably referring to a place called Chinatown in Toronto, which is right in the heart of Toronto. It's a long street called Spadina Avenue. And on Spadina, you have, well, it is called Chinatown. And if you walk down that street, you would think you were in China. Everyone speaks Chinese or Mandarin or whatever it is. And all the stores, they have a hard time serving you in English. So you have to learn how to communicate using body language. And that's probably what you remember.
Excuse me, and because of this, let's say, all those ethnicities that live over there in Canada, do people over there learn other languages, even though you are native English speakers? Or you don't have this culture?
We do. So I grew up learning French and German in school. And my written French and my written German is good. So if I'm in a job and somebody sends me an email, I can respond no problem. Because I haven't been living in France or Quebec or Germany, I cannot speak it. I can understand what's being said to me, but my mind doesn't work fast enough to have the words come out of my mouth in return. So I'll answer in English. But if you have more than one language here in Canada, you will be paid a lot more. Laurence, you would make a lot of money here because you speak English and you speak French.
And Portuguese.
Yes. So Canada is a bilingual country. Our national languages are English and French. And if you speak both of those languages, you are a commodity because most people only speak one or the other. If you speak both, you can, work in many, many different jobs. and they pay you well for it. Laurence, I think, has her hand up.
Yes, I have a question because when I was young, let's say around 25, when I started working, I had friends, they also wanted to apply to work in Canada. And at that time, there was a very complicated program. You had to apply, and according to your age, you should have such amount of money on your bank account before you could move to Canada, or at least to Montreal or to Quebec. And there was kind of a lottery according to your age. Let's say there was I don't know, in total, if 100% of people were entering the country per year, there will be 50% below 30. And the older you will get, the most difficult it will be to get into the lottery, to get the visa. So is it still the case?
I think that has changed. That has changed, and there are a few things that would have caused that to change. So back in 2008, Quebec officially became a nation within a nation. So they almost run themselves like their own country. So, and with that, they have different, like, international student and immigrant laws that are probably friendlier, I would say, a lot friendlier. So if you wanted to go to McGill University in Montreal now, you would probably have an easier time coming in as an international student.
Yeah, because it was really, really complicated before.
Yeah, I believe that. I think they have made it quite a bit easier, and you'll see that in the international student numbers in Canada. They've just been going up, especially in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver as well. So, yeah.
So you could think it will be an option if I would start applying for a job in Canada,
Yes,
in Vancouver,
come on over.
I don't think I will go to the French-speaking part, but okay, why not?
Yeah, they have good food in Quebec. I will say that. The food in Quebec is very good.
Oh, by the way, if you speak about food, can I ask another question? Is it like in America very difficult to find cheaper or relatively good money for fresh food? In America, is apparently very difficult. It's very expensive to buy fresh food.
Cheaper in Canada.
It's cheaper.
I'm not too sure why. Probably because we have a smaller population and many farms, so we're able to produce a lot of our own local produce. Living in Niagara, I am surrounded by fruit farms. So peach farms, cherry farms, yeah, you name it. And also wineries. We have a lot of wineries out here. But I have noticed when I go to the United States, Buffalo is about 45 minutes from my house. So I'll go to Buffalo, I'll go to a grocery store. They do have different food there, but if I look to buy an avocado, for example, they usually come from Mexico. I would think they would be cheaper in the US because they've traveled a shorter distance, so less money to transport them there. But an avocado may be $5 there, and when you come across the border to Canada, it may be $1. Wow. So there's a big difference in the fresh food prices. I don't know why, though. Doesn't really make much sense in my mind. I think Renato has his hand up here.
Yeah, but I have a question. Not a question. I remember the wine weed or yards there, and I remember that was really interesting. But I think that impressed me a lot when I was in Toronto, not in Canada. The demand for people in the technology area and medical area. Yeah, I remember that there was some people in the medical area that even didn't speak English well, but they got a job because the demand was high. And there is a place there close to Toronto, called Waterloo. Waterloo, it's a place where there is people said that's the Silicio Valley of Canada.
It is, yes.
Waterloo, yeah. So but I got impressed how easy it was to get a job in these two areas, medical area and technology. I don't know if it keeps the same or not.
It is, especially the medical area now. In Canada, we regulate our doctors and nurses, and we want to make sure that the public is safe, that we have well-trained professionals. Unfortunately, we had an association, the association that for all the doctors, that thought it was a good idea to cap or limit all medical school admissions. So in Canada, for years, we were maybe producing 120 doctors a year. That's not enough for a 40 million, people population that's getting older and older and older. So the system is very desperate for help right now. And wait times for, say, an MRI, if you need an MRI, could be up to 2 years. And if you have cancer, it's a problem. So a lot of people will pay to go to the US, pay $1,000 to get their scan, get whatever they need, and they'll come back up to Canada to try and speed up their treatment. And we have another question here.
No, that's it.
No, that was it.
Okay,
Oh.
Vinny.
Yes, I have a lot of questions, but then let's follow this subject. How's like the healthcare system over there? Is it like free, it's public, everything is private? I really don't know about Canada and how the hospital system works.
So it's definitely public. We have our provinces have their own little health plan. In Ontario, it's called the Ontario Health Insurance Plan. It's funded by taxpayers. Now, that being said, we do still have to pay for some stuff. Not everything is covered. So if you go in for a surgery at the hospital and you're going to be staying there a week, you may have to pay for your hospital room. It may be subsidized, but you may have to pay the part that isn't paid for by the government. But it is definitely more reasonable. Most people don't go bankrupt from medical fees in Canada. Yeah.
People will ever go bankrupt because of this.
Yes, yeah. In other areas of the world, though, like they do, right? You hear about that. People who get sick and they have $100,000 worth of medical bills, and it's sad because what do you do if you're really sick and you're going to die? You probably have to spend that money and then worry about it afterwards, right? Yeah.
If I may, I have another question. That is,
Yes.
what is the trail that you had to follow to become a judge? Yes.
Oh boy.
That's a great question.
That's a good question. I was very lucky. So Simone, when we met, I was working for the Premier of Ontario. Yeah, a premier is like a governor, like in the United States have governors. So the Premier of Ontario I worked for, and from there I went on to Ottawa. I lived in Ottawa for years. I worked for the Prime Minister. And then I went on to become a lobbyist. So I was picked up by Hill and Knowlton in Canada. It's a big firm. And I lobbied for years. But I've worked in politics since I was 19, very, very young. And I made a lot of friends across the board. They worked with me for years. They knew my skill set. They knew what I could do. I have a good mind to interpret legislation. I had to in my job. So I knew how to interpret law and apply law. In government, you actually have to do quite a bit of that. So I had an opportunity to apply to be a tribunal judge. So a tribunal judge is one step below court, like a court judge. And I applied and I was interviewed and I wrote a number of exams to show that I was competent and could do the job. And about 6 months after I did all of that, I received notice that I was appointed by the Lieutenant Governor, who is the Queen's representative. So it is an appointed position. It's not something you usually get hired into. But I will say that it's not very partisan. So I've had a lot of experience working in politics, but it doesn't really matter if it's a liberal politician, a conservative politician. If you go through and you interview and you do the exam parts, and you're found to be competent, it doesn't matter which party you worked for, they usually will just appoint you. Yeah.
Okay.
Here in Brazil have a problem, Jen, because I'm going to. Are you set? Because I'm going to give a new for you. Half of the law schools in the world are here in Brazil. 50% of the school. That's crazy. I think that we have Brazilian and lawyers here. And so it's, I don't know. I think that this is a reason that we have so many laws and so few justice here in our country. But okay, I'm not going to talk about politics now. But this is a situation that we have. We have 50% of these law schools in the world here in Brazil. That's impressive. Do you recognize this picture in my background?
That looks like Niagara Falls.
Yeah,
That's
Niagara
the
Falls,
Rainbow Bridge, the bridge that goes across the river there. They refer to it as the Rainbow or Whirlpool Bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have Buffalo here. I think so. Buffalo and here is Niagara. Yeah.
Yes, it's near. So that's we're actually in your photo, we're looking at Niagara Falls, New York and Niagara Falls, Canada, depending on the side of the screen.
Yeah.
And Buffalo is about 20 minutes away from Niagara Falls, New York. And it's actually where hydroelectricity was invented.
Yeah.
So
In Niagara Falls, I lost some money in the casino.
yeah, so I don't go there, I know. We have a lot of casinos in Niagara Falls. They do in the US too, on the US side of Niagara Falls, many casinos. Yeah, they're run by the indigenous people, usually here in Canada and the US. So in the US, you have the Seneca indigenous people run the casino there. And then in Canada, we have the Mohawk indigenous people that run one of the casinos, and I can't remember who runs the other one, but yeah, it raises money for charity, so you can feel good that the money you lost at least went to charity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Lucas is a little bit quiet. I'd like to hear Lucas ask a question.
Yes,
Oh,
Lucas.
I was about to raise my hand right now. I have a question, like, because Canada is such a country that like embrace a lot of foreigners, and I would like to know from someone who's been living there for a while, if there is, because like I imagine that the government have to take some direction towards this question related to a lot of immigrants going to Canada. And I would like to know if there is something that you miss, like when you were younger, that because of the culture has been changing because of the immigrants and the foreigners and all this kind of stuff. If there is something that you miss that nowadays you don't have like as frequently as before because of this, like this cultural, like
all the immigrants. Well, I can say that I can definitely answer that. So when I was younger, the price of a home was about what you would pay, or what about 2 years of your salary. That would be the price of your home. For a really nice home, you would get a detached home, a nice yard, upgraded like marbled countertops, everything. So that would be about 2 years of your salary. And as more immigrants started coming into Canada, we weren't building homes fast enough. Everyone wanted a home to live in. So as immigrants came in, they were driving up the price of the few homes that were for sale. And I was fine. I bought my first home at 24. So I've always owned a home. I'm basically rich because of it, because just a normal family home now will go between $1 and $2 million, even in Niagara, and it's nothing special. It's just a normal home. So they're very, very expensive. And my poor sister, I have a younger sister, she, because she was younger, was a few years behind me. And as the immigrants continued coming in, the prices of homes kept going up and up. And she just has never been able to afford one. Because she would need to save about 15 years worth of her income, her annual salary, to afford one. Yeah. And that's
My
hard to do.
goodness, it's
Yeah.
a lot of money.
It is, right? And I'm happy for me. I have a house that's worth lots of money. It's almost paid for, but I also know in my mind this it's not really fair, and I worry about my daughter when she graduates and wants to find a place to live, if she'll ever be able to afford to buy. Yeah. So we'll see. But that is a big change since I was younger. It happened over the last 20 years, and it's something that changed, and I think everyone thought it would go back to the way it was. It was just a wave and it would go back. I don't think it ever is. I think it was a change that was happening. We weren't really aware that it was a permanent change. So
Gotcha. Here in São Paulo, we also have this problem. Like everyone from Brazil tends to come to São Paulo to get the better jobs, and actually the jobs there pay more money. And nowadays to buy a house, like it's very expensive. Yeah. Or it's very, very expensive, or it's like it's a very, very small house with like 1 bedroom. Like it's so I think it's probably it's something that probably happens like in every big city.
yes.
But actually, and related to like to hobbies and this kind of stuff, the cultural impact of immigrants like changed something related to that as well, or just for this infrastructure issue?
I guess it would depend where you go. I grew up in a suburb of Toronto called Brampton, and I will say most of the immigrants that came over were very proud to be Canadian, and they tried to speak English, and they tried to learn our culture, and they tried to dress like us. And so with them, I don't really think I missed anything. They were wonderful. I think it enriched my upbringing. I learned a lot from them. And a lot of them have had, well, you would probably know it's not easy to leave your home country and move to a brand new country across the world. So a lot of them had a lot of stories, and yeah, I learned from them. But I will say, I think in the last few years, we've had a lot of refugees come over because the world is a little bit more unstable than it used to be. And with those refugees, maybe they're happy to be out of danger, but they're less focused on speaking English and dressing like us, or dressing like North Americans, I should say, and that sort of thing. So yeah, I will say, depending on where you go in the province of Ontario, you may miss some of the things that were there 20 years ago. Yeah. But if you go out of the big cities, you will find not very many immigrants. Most immigrants go to the big cities. They go to Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, but especially Toronto and Vancouver. So.
Wally, do you have a question maybe?
Wally.
Well, actually, I really didn't have much question. To be honest, I've always dreamed of moving to Canada.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
I've always
cold
dreamed of-
here. I'm surprised to hear that. The winter here is so cold. Everyone talks about moving to Canada, and I'm like, oh, it's so cold. I want to go to Brazil.
But right now, that dream is changing because the way, as in the way Canada is right now, houses and, is getting to the boiling point. If I move to Canada, how am I going to, live is very, very important. Just because you just want to move doesn't mean that you have to move, You have to consider everything. Before coming to Brazil, I put in some consideration before coming here and, and it was very good for me. I would have moved to Europe because it was easier for me to move to Europe than to Brazil. But I decided to come here because I know that the immigration process here is very easy, not that difficult. And also, it's also very easy for me to be able to settle down, like houses and all those things. So I think at least it paid off. But now moving to Canada, no, because the houses is a very big problem. And also, to me, I call Canada as big, but does not have too many people, living in it. There's too many lands, but, empty space is there. And if the issue of housing can resolve, maybe, who knows, I can come.
Yes, we're trying to fix things, so give it a few years, maybe things will get better, but we're building a lot of homes now, and the different governments have plans to build, say, 1 million homes within the next 2 years, so they are really focused on building. We'll see if it helps keep the cost of living down, because the cost of living is hard when you have to pay so much for your housing.
Jen, so you said you bought a house in Toronto, but then you moved to Ottawa, and now you're in Niagara Falls. So are you renting now? And you're
No, I own a detached home on a court, and I have just under half of an acre of land, so I have quite a bit of land. For me, anyway, it's a lot of lawn to mow, and a lot of gardens to maintain, but I really like it. I enjoy that. So, and the value of this house between when I bought it in 2015 and now, it's more than doubled in price because of the demand for houses. The
But the
pandemic,
time that you spent in Ottawa, did you have a house there as well?
I
Or
did,
in
yes,
Ottawa?
yes.
So, okay, so you bought it and you sold it and then you bought it again. Oh, there
And
you
I've
go.
always made money. So every time I bought and sold a house, I could buy a bigger house, and then I would sell that house and
I
buy a bigger
see.
house, yeah.
That's
I have
interesting.
Jen, I have a niece that's living in Mississauga. Mississauga is a place close to Toronto. I think
Yes.
that's the big Toronto, something like that. Okay, and she's a franchisee of Remax, that real
yes.
estate company. Yeah, I think that's the biggest real estate company or franchise real estate company in the world. I think so. Here in Brazil, have a lot of them. And I remember that she went there. She moved to Canada when she was single. Now she has 4 daughters, and she got to join many Brazilians that decide to buy a house or buy a property in Canada. Okay, mainly around Toronto, and so I think that was a wow. I think that she adapted a lot with in the city, and she's living very well in a big house in Mississauga. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but I remember an interesting thing in Toronto that I remember that Canadians were proud because you have the biggest, the longest street in the world.
Oh,
Young
yes.
Street.
Young Street, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about Young Street, street that go through Toronto to the how can I say
Ocean.
the countryside, yeah.
Yes.
And yeah,
I know.
that was curious, yeah. And do you have a friend? You have a friend here. Do you remember Bruce and Chris that moved to Canada to a place called Dr. Moncton, something like that? And he works in a company that's called GJ Irving. GJ Irving. I think it's a big multinational Canadian company, and he is living there for 3 years now, don't you? Are you? I mean, right, Bruce? I think that Chris is living in
Actually,
Canada
Chris got a government job. Now he processes for visas.
Oh, okay.
He got
Yeah.
a big job opportunity because his English.
Mhm.
Good,
You know,
yeah.
because he struggled hard. He's a graduate of English Brazil because he
Yeah.
entered English Brazil talking like I talk a little bit, you know, like
Mhm.
that. And now he speaks good English, not perfect English. Nobody does. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter who you are, where you're from. Nobody speaks perfect English because the American English is different than the British English. Okay,
Mhm.
and if you're from one or the other, the English from the other country is like, wow, they don't know how to speak English, do they? So
And in Canada, we're confused, right? Like in Canada, we think we want to be American some days and British other days. Like we
yeah,
don't really like, do you spell color with a U or
yeah.
no? You know?
Yeah, so I mean, Chris got a job there and he's doing good, but he got a job with the government. It's like incredible what he's done in the short time he's been there. I'm amazed, and I'm very happy for him.
Mhm.
But he lives
Yeah,
in, I
surprised.
think he lives
I
in New
didn't know.
Brunswick. He lives in New Brunswick.
Oh,
I
beautiful.
didn't know about that because when Chris started English Brazil, he didn't speak anything in English.
Yeah, it was rough. It was a hard moment for him, but you know what? He was dedicated. He dedicated about 2.5, almost 3 months of his time to go to every meeting we had. And he just kept using English more and more, and now he speaks okay.
Yeah,
And that's a testimony to you guys in English Brazil as organizers and teachers. That's how they learn, by repeating the conversations that they're hearing from us. And you guys did that. So congratulations.
yeah.
And languages, well, especially in Canada, but I'm sure elsewhere in the world, speaking multiple languages
Like
is such an
Wally
asset.
speaks 5 languages.
Do you really? Wow. That's impressive.
Yes, I do. You know, we have local language in Nigeria, and then we
Yes.
also speak English as our official language. So
Mhm.
you have to, you know, we also have a language called broken English, whereby we are speaking English, but we are not speaking it rightly, so that the English people won't understand what we are saying. You understand? Like
Uh-huh.
if an American or British comes to our country and we don't want them to understand what we are saying, we start speaking broken. So now the broken English, the illiterate people and the literate people cannot understand each other. So it's a language that it is widely spoken in Nigeria, but it's not official. So when you are illiterate and you're also literate, like you go to school, you'll be able to understand each other. So that is just it.
That's funny.
That's really neat.
So we have a
Wally,
couple
what
minutes
about
here.
Portuguese? Portuguese. Are you speaking Portuguese now, Wally?
Yes, I have to speak Portuguese because I live in Brazil. I must, because it's very important. Like at work, whenever they don't want to speak Portuguese with me, I always beg them, please, I need Portuguese. Eu preciso falar Portuguese because I have to live in Brazil. Like if you must live, you have to speak Portuguese. So I beg them to speak Portuguese, and I want to learn Portuguese, and I have the passion to learn Portuguese. It's always good. Learning languages, bridging the gaps between two people. Now my daughter she speaks Portuguese and she speaks English.
Oh,
So
Okay.
at this small age, if you speak Portuguese to her, she will hear. If you speak English to her, she will hear. So
she loves her dad. Look at her. She loves her
yeah,
dad.
yeah,
Yep.
very, 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 very much. Thanks.
Very cute.
Okay, guys, we are running out of time. Is there anyone who'd like to ask the last question to Jen? Because I promised 1 hour and I'm pretty sure she's busy and she has lots of things to do this Saturday.
Yeah, she needs to make some money for that college education.
That's right.
So expensive.
Among other things that she has to do today.
Well, and I'm sure all of you have stuff to do today too, but it's been a real pleasure being here with you. And yeah, happy to take 1 or 2 last questions for sure.
I have a question. Um, what would you recommend to someone who is going to Canada in the near future?
I would say pick your location wisely. Pick the province, the city. I would definitely recommend moving to a city. You'll have all your support systems there and amenities that you don't necessarily have if you move to a place in the country, a very small place. So pick a city, pick a province. Some are more affordable than others. Ottawa, for example, is much more affordable than Toronto. And Ottawa also has quite a few jobs. So take a look, and then of course there's Waterloo, which we call the Silicon Valley of Canada. You guys may remember BlackBerry. Do you remember the BlackBerry back in the day? That was yeah, cell phones, the old BlackBerries. They were designed by a company called Research in Motion, and they're still in Waterloo. So you have Research in Motion, you have Adobe, you have a number of very large companies that have large offices, like they're almost like their own cities out in the Waterloo area, and cost of living there is cheaper too. So you pay less for housing and stuff like that. Yeah, so that would be my advice. Just research where you want to go and have the pros and the cons of each place, and then you'll get a better idea of what's right for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Jen, when it comes to tourism, because I know from experience, Canada is a huge country. So if someone would like to go to Canada, you cannot just say, oh, you can go to Vancouver and to Toronto. There's no way, because it's really far and you do have to take at least 2 weeks off to visit and travel a lot. So do you know the west part, the west coast of Canada as well?
I do, yes.
So if someone would like to go to Canada, would you say Vancouver or Toronto? Don't be biased because you're born in Toronto.
So both have both are different. So Vancouver is actually the top 2 most expensive cities to live in all of the world. It is very expensive. It's actually more money to live there than Toronto. So cost of living is very high. That being said, they have the mountains, they have the ocean. It is beautiful. The scenery is beautiful. Toronto, we have Lake Ontario. We have a Great Lake, so we do have some beaches. It's a freshwater lake, so it's not the ocean, it's freshwater. It goes out into the St. Lawrence Seaway. And cost of living is less. And we also have a bigger population, so we may have more kind of amenities, and we're also close to the US. Now, Vancouver is also close to the US. They're close to Washington, in Seattle. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess it would depend. It would depend what you're
I think it's a very difficult choice, because they're completely different cities.
They are, yeah.
Okay, Jen, I think our time is up. I'd like to thank you very, very much for being here with us. I believe it's one of the first sessions that I felt so calm, and I had a feeling that I was just sitting in front of you in your living room, because it was so easy. Yeah, that's the energy that I get from you, and it was amazing. I'm sure everybody also had a good time. I got to know your country a little bit better, as well as you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen.
And who knows, you're going to be available to join us once again in the future.
Yes, anytime. And if any of you actually do manage to make your way up to Canada, especially in the Ontario area, let Simone know. She can always put us in touch. I can give you some tips if they're helpful.
That's lovely. Thank you so much.
Lovely.
And for the rest of you guys, have a great Saturday, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.